I've tried to intellectualize the experience, and basically it's just drawing in public. So for me to make kind of like a theoretical assumption around what happens when people watch other people, which is what I do. I'll go out and I'll draw in public, and I'll draw the structures first, and then take note of the people there. And a lot of times interactions will happen based on just passerby curiosity. Certain environments, sometimes sensitive locations that are prone to, say, terror attacks, or that have some kind of way of having some kind of surveillance in place already. I'd like to see what it's like to look back at other people who are in authority. There's a policing of the gays, on the East Coast especially. It's pretty apparent, and it's doubly so because I'm a black man. I think that I take that into consideration. The way that artists do work in public, if they're doing anything from drawing to performing, I think people will take notice. So I'm just kind of making light of that, making a satire out of it in a bit of a way, and then kind of exposing the system for what it is.
The more I explored this programming language, which it's like a pretty limited, it's just like a different version of Java, which is a much more complex language. So there's restrictions, so I would kind of run up against some of those too, and run up against those with the files and how they were rendered. And I was like, oh wow, like if I try to read the image this way in the program, like all of a sudden everything's really huge. All the all the pixels are now huge instead of a tiny 1 pixel sized bit. Water's a liminal space to me, and in many ways, especially when you're on the East Coast, it's all the same body of water. And then so I could be looking at water, or sitting in water that I had been in as a baby. So then as I was thinking about memory, I was like, wow, this, water's kind of transcending that. Definitely, I'm very interested in breaking down these images into their technical components in a way that eerily makes us think about the way that they're composed. I haven't really explicitly tapped into the supernatural. I'm definitely thinking about memory though, and I think there's a little bit that becomes kind of eerie and ghostly when things fade in and out of your memory. All of the images that I use and videos I take in a very informal, casual way, usually on my phone, so low resolution. And I source my, the photos that I kind of make these weird blocky pixel images from photos I've taken either recently or in past. And so all the pictures with figures in them are family photos. And I've kind of blocked, pixelated myself out because there's kind of these different bodies of water. So I'm not trying to combine these two senses of space.
Child, I was always making art, declared myself an artist, but for a long time I was a frustrated painter, and I found printmaking as a medium, and it's been a whole nother world since then. A lot of the work that I do in printmaking is environmentally friendly, process-driven, no acids, no terpenoids, turpentines, things like that. So everything's made with soy-based inks, and everything is experimental. So a lot of these pieces have been made from recycled materials and overlapping different materials, and then figuring out how these work through the press the best way. These three together are my favorite because I usually don't add much color other than this muted color palette, which I think is colorful, but I went a little out of my realm and added these bits of orange in there. So before I was sort of traditionally trained in oil paints and processes that were not in this way. So I sort of played around more and more and developed this as I went. This is the most color I've worked with in a while, actually, and I like very muted color palettes. I like textures, layers, things that feel organic and show how you can repurpose things that maybe aren't organic to create these layers and depths.
I'm going to be definitely continuing with glitch and kind of compressed images because there's still so much that I can do out of that, so much that like I can think about and like instill more memories to even kind of mine.
We deal with so much trauma in this country that it's hard to recognize what it is, what it looks like, you know, on the outside. And I fail to recognize that too sometimes. So it's just to take notice of that we have to keep in our minds, you know, what has happened for the years and years of like just struggle and hurt and pain that have gone through, you know, the creation of our country.